Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chaney podcast. I am your host, Nathan Chaney. Today, we're going to have a quick chat with Hugo, who is a founder who's in the international global transportation machine, helping to make sure that transactions and compliance and all that sort of stuff happens correctly, efficiently, all of the above. And so we're going to get to hear a little bit of a founder story today. We're going to hear a little bit about maybe a little bit of expert insights into the tariffs and the chaos that we're all in at the moment. If you're listening to this podcast 5 years from now, this might be a funny thing to look back on. Or maybe it'll be like, man, that was a dark time. Who knows? We'll see. But Hugo, thanks for coming on and also humoring the fact that I got worker guys working on the house right behind me. So thanks for coming on. Tell us a little about yourself. Give us the 411 on Hugo.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm Hugo Pakula. I'm the CEO of True Identity. I'm the founder as well, alongside my co-founder Henry. I started the business actually about 5 years ago, not as a business, just as an idea. I was watching. I was in logistics, running a software company, and seeing the trend change. Right, we're seeing a trend towards more regulation, more scrutiny, more data requirements, and watching our inside of our own business at the time, totally different company, the quality of the data just being so bad. I'm going to give you a really great example, very small one, which is that I was looking at, you see people importing things like shoes and computers, right? Let's look at the shoes example. The row that I remember just sitting in my room looking at this specific row of data and looking at the description was the letter S. And you think, how is anybody doing their job with a description of the item as the letter S? And if that's a picture for the future of supply chain, then we should all be scared. And that really set me on the path towards kind of what we're doing now. That was a very high level, but didn't tell you exactly what we do.
Well, I feel like you should have almost called the company something to do with the letter S. Like that's your genesis, your inspiration, I guess, right? Like your shirts you wear at shows should just have a big S and be like, "Ask me about my
Ask
S."
me. Yeah,
Uh,
that's right.
so maybe step back a little bit from who you are today and tell us about like who you were growing up. Tell us a little about childhood days and kind of those early, I guess, life experiences.
Sure. Well, I'm guessing you can tell from my accent. I'm not American. I was born in Australia, which I happen to be in right now. It's beautiful here. And yeah, I was born here. I stayed here till I was 15. I moved to the States. I went to high school in New York City and sort of public school in the middle of Manhattan, which was a big transition from private school in Australia. Uh, took my shoes off every day for security at school, like went through, to me, that was crazy as an Aussie. Moved to the States. I was a software engineer. I actually learned how to code when I was 10 years old. And so was coding for years and years and building some random side projects. I did that through high school and was always looking for kind of a challenge. I think my story is always generally about trying to find a challenge. So I ended up leaving high school at the end of junior year and went to college at 16. Did college for 2 years as a software engineering degree and was already a software engineer. So I don't think I was particularly challenged. So I moved again. I dropped out of college and did that at the end of my sophomore year. So I was 18. When I dropped out, it was because I had a friend who was asking me to start. We were working together on this education technology company. Personally, education reform is a passion, but not something I can do that much about, to be honest. It's a struggle in the United States, I think, overall. We started this company as a way to help essentially high schoolers keep track of homework, assignments, all that stuff. But we were competing with Blackboard, if you've ever heard of them. They're in every college. They spend a ton of money getting customers, all this stuff. Anyway, so we pivoted and we turned it into a consumer social networking app. We took one of the best features of a school app and turned it into a social network. It was like if Twitter, I would describe it as if Twitter and Reddit had a baby. It would be like what we called Bonfire. And we launched that at the start of the pandemic. And it grew to 60,000 users in 2 weeks. and grew like crazy. So we raised money off the back of that growth. That was my first experience sort of with investors and startups. We built that company for a while. We got to about 200,000 users. Um, it was a lot of fun, but it wasn't quite a business. And I think, that took a toll. We built and built and built and tried all these things. And I got to experience what I think is my first kind of real failure as a founder. It was really, really hard. We had to let everybody go, tried to help everybody get jobs, closed down. We ended up selling the intellectual property, but really it wasn't anything massive, right? And that was my sort of first experience as a founder. And I think that helped shape me now. I learned a lot of what not to do. But overall, really what that led me to is I tried doing a bunch of interesting projects. I did some consulting. That was, I don't know, everybody has their moment, I think, in consulting. I did that for a little
Yep.
while, built a few other projects. And then I kind of looked at what I'm going to do next and started thinking about, what do I know? I know software, but I also grew up around in a family that is in logistics. So we actually have a family business that's in the industry, and they do cross-border e-commerce. And so I was always surrounded by that and listening to how they close deals and how you work with airlines and how you try and facilitate global trade, specifically for small parcel, which is a real challenge. There's a lot of complexity that comes with many, many, many small things rather than a couple of big things. And built a company on top of their network, top of their final mile network. That was my first company in supply chain. And we essentially enabled freight forwarders, 3PLs, airlines, and postal authorities to create their own e-commerce, end-to-end e-commerce network. So that would allow them to compete directly with UPS, DHL, and FedEx. And that was where I sort of got to see all of that data. That was what led me to the beginning of what's now True Identity, which is seeing the data cross-border is just so bad. The stuff available to carriers, to postal authorities, to forwarders, it's so bad. And the thought that anybody could even do their jobs using that kind of data is insane to think about. Really, I took that and said, gee, what can be done? This just isn't the future. And I'm a software engineer, so I feel like it was sort of perfect. It's like the perfect storm to try and solve a problem. So was looking at all of that data, and then at the same time watching new regulation and legislation come through. Watching all of this new legislation about more regulation, more scrutiny, more data, and saying, you know what, I'm in a good place to do something about this. I don't know what. And I was watching at the same time the government, U.S. Customs, is working on this new program. I ended up patenting the global True ID system. At the time, it wasn't called that. It was just a global supply chain entity verification patent. So I wrote that 5 years ago, and that formed the beginning of True. And we've essentially evolved from there. We didn't have a business. It was just an idea. The idea that you could verify entities in a supply chain, just like in finance, right? We saw finance evolve over the last 25 years, where every single transaction now is verified, right? It's got some kind of know your customer, KYC, or anti-money laundering check. We don't have that in supply chain. How is all of this stuff moving around the world? $4 trillion of trade into the United States, and there's no checks on imports? It's unbelievable, right? Not only from a government perspective, but from a private sector. You're at risk to every single transaction. So that was the beginning of True Identity, and we've evolved into automated compliance cross-border.
I see. And that bit of IP, the patent, you were awarded the patent fully, like you went through the full process and
We've been going through the process for 4.5 years. We're in what
okay.
our lawyers describe as the late stage, which is
Okay.
great. We're not there. It hasn't been issued, which is
Okay.
frustrating. It's patent pending.
Okay, okay, but kind of like the back end of smarts of Tridentity is leaning on that, is leveraging that.
It is.
Um,
It works with or without the patent, right? The system
okay,
still works.
okay,
But the patent memorializes essentially this idea of being able to verify these entities, maintain a blockchain, doesn't have to be blockchain, but maintain a blockchain of these entities and the transactions, and then the benefits that come from recording them on a public ledger.
I see. So I was just about to say everything that you were saying a second ago sounded very blockchainy, and so it's interesting that you just made the hint that it's not blockchain. It's kind of like the folks now that say we operate like machine learning or AI, but it's not. It's just like a decision tree or whatever in the back end. So can you tell like how it's kind of like blockchain but not?
So it is on blockchain, but the patent doesn't technically require it. It just is a feature of the patent. It is built on a blockchain. It essentially, we have two blockchains. We have a private blockchain and a public blockchain. The public blockchain allows us to record the metadata of the transaction. This is very detailed. Allows you to record the metadata of the transaction, and the private blockchain keeps the underlying entity information. So anything that is identifiable, that is a name or a person, or any kind of personal information, PII, is recorded on a private chain that's not accessible, and then is linked to the public chain, which allows us to verify those transactions. So anyone can theoretically look at the public chain and confirm that that a transaction happened and that the parties to the transaction are legit, but they can't see the underlying entity information.
Listening to your story about how you've like found this intersection between what your family has done and your sort of innate sort of talent for software and coding and such. How does your family feel about this? Is it like they're like, we worked all this like hard labor work, and you come in here and you just type on a keyboard and make magic happen, and that's a way of making a living? Or how's the dynamics like at the dinner table?
It's an awesome question. I think they like that I'm in the business, at least. Everyone has their own perspective. My brother and my dad work in their business together. My brother lives in China and runs their physical facility. My dad's in New York. I think they probably would have liked if I was in the family business. But I think what's very funny is we'll go to shows, like we'll go to Manifest in Vegas, and we'll both book the show independently and not know that the others are going. And then we'll get there and go, oh, I didn't know you were coming to Vegas.
That's so bizarre. That's so bizarre.
It's really strange. So it's fun. I think being in the same industry is fun. It's odd sometimes because we're not in the same actual business. And we've got our own independent things going on that cross over. I think I have personal frustration sometimes as a founder, and that I'll go to events and I'm walking around and, you have a name badge on. It says Hugo Pakula. Someone says, "Oh, Hugo, I know your dad." And I go, "Okay, I know him too."
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
No, just, you like to pave your own path, but I think it helps. It's nice that people know us all. And we try and keep it in the family, help each other out. They share things over to us. I share things over to them. And then my mum hears me and my dad talk about, tariffs and all the changes. And she just says 1%, 2%. I don't know what you're talking about.
I see. I see. There is it's always interesting to hear those folks that have been sitting at the dinner table growing up as a kid and hearing about business things and logistics and supply chain type topics, because you've had this like constant drip of exposure to it for a long time. And I always think, and I kind of reflect back on my life where that was not like, my dad was a bus driver. My mom was a teacher's aide. And so it was like never any concepts of business and whatnot. So that's, I'm wondering, like, how is that influence, for you? Is there some of those influences from just kind of hearing things in passing, I guess, where it's kind of, I think you've had this entrepreneurial type of spirit. Is that from your dad a bit, maybe?
Yeah, there's no question. I'm very lucky to have grown up in a family with entrepreneurial mindset. I think I don't really know where this came from, but I get told that I have always had a fascination with transportation, anything that gets you from A to B. I'm gonna guess that's because of the family business. But when I was a kid, they weren't in that industry. So our family used to run a brand, like a clothing brand, and they had 27 stores across Australia. And then in the early 2000s, everything moved online. And that was the natural progression was, well, when you move online, you close your stores, you're basically a sourcing company and a logistics company. So they became naturally a logistics company. They ended up selling their shipping rates to other people. And they went, hold on, we make more money doing this than selling clothes. So why don't we do logistics?
Wow. Man, no, you're just chock full of good anecdotes and stories.
Well, it's
Uh,
weird. It's just a weird progression. I think that's a learning is also like things just progress naturally. You just do what you're good at and do more of it, and you find your way. And just
yeah.
like not resist change. But I think that's the mindset probably of the family, and actually multi-generationally the family. I just was in Poland last year, and saw where my grandfather grew up. No money, no wealth, no nothing. I mean, it just like so poor, and the amount of value creation in 2 generations is just incredible to look at. And they're all entrepreneurial. My dad is. So
Yeah. When you were talking a moment ago about being at Manifest and running into folks, can you talk a little bit about the different sort of conferences, the way that you stay up to date with what's going on in industries, events and networking, professional groups, and that sort of deal?
yeah. How do you stay up to date is a really good question. I think the bulk of it's network, finding people you trust, and people to share what's going on. I've got a list of things I subscribe to. That helps a lot. But I don't think that's the answer. I think you have to really be looking at the facts yourself. Yeah, Manifest is amazing show. I mean, I can plug it. I could plug that for hours. It's a fantastic show. All the best innovative companies, I think, are there. Um, I think, I think part of it is you're lucky to I'm lucky to have a foundation, right? As to have built it over 5 years or more, where I've met great people and met people that are really close to the action. Where now, firstly, I work with Congress on trade policy, so I have people directly at the source. And so, I help them write the policy, but also then get updates. They say, hey, we're working on this. Can you comment? So I think I'm lucky because I get to see stuff before it's public. I also get access to things like executive orders sometimes early, which is very strange. But I think there's a mix. I think in our industry, well, especially now, but I think in our industry, we really need to be looking at public official sources because there's a lot of noise. It's exhausting. It's so exhausting. There's so much noise, and some of it is plain false. It's not even. I just don't understand what people get out of it. I think you can tell I feel frustrated with this stuff, but I don't understand why people share false information, blatantly false.
Well, I feel like, I think that the precedent or the acceptance of that was somewhat set during COVID time when I think that the word was coined alternative facts. And this concept that if you just say something loud enough and enough, then it becomes true, like abracadabra. So I feel like that
Yeah,
has somehow gone from the medical field in during COVID time, and now it is kind of founding and manifesting itself in supply chain and logistics, maybe.
I think ChatGPT learned from all of us. If you just say it confidently enough, anyone will believe it, right?
Well, that is one way to accomplish things is just say things with conviction, I guess. Let's maybe talk a little bit about kind of dig into the nuts and bolts of Tru and maybe actually one question first, maybe on that founder conversation is you have a co-founder. Can you talk a little bit about how you all kind of separate, and conquer or like different, how you came to that decision of partnering it with Henry?
Yeah, well, I'm going to say number one that Henry is awesome. He is the man. So I'm very lucky to work with him. We met when I was not working on Tru and was not working in supply chain. We're very lucky to have a friendship outside of being co founders. So we've known each other for 8 years and been working together for about 2. So we really have a lot more foundation than I think a lot of people who are co founders and do the startup world together. Um, yeah. How do we separate it? Honestly, I think it's I think it's really natural. I think just like we became co-founders naturally, I think that's really natural. Um, he's got a life. I find sometimes I'm a bit. I just love my work. No, but I think it's a great relationship. I mean, the root of it is how do you separate it? We make sure we have time together that's not work. I think that helps a lot. Go for dinner or just catch up. But you know what? I think part of being a founder that's different to having a job is that it is a big part of your life, and it does rule a lot of your day or a lot of your world. I have friends who will be on the phone and they just hang up, and I go, what just happened? They say, oh, a customer called me. I go, okay, I understand. Customers come first. That is just the way it works. We
Yeah.
prioritize the work. So we've definitely had our moments too. We've been out enjoying ourselves together, and then something comes up and you go, well, this is the priority. We're going to make it work no matter what. So
What about
I
in
think
terms
it's,
of workload? Because I think that you've kind of clearly set yourself as a technical expert on programming side. Does he bring a different set of skills to the table, or do y'all like how does that part work?
okay, well, firstly, that's a must for co-founders. They must be symbiotic. They shouldn't have the same skills as you. Um, so yeah, Henry comes from business development. He ran a team in finance previously. Um, he is really great at partnerships. I think that's kind of the channel that is his winning, bread and butter. So he definitely is a counterbalance. I am technical, but I think I'm more the sort of the subject matter expert in our business. And then Henry brings together, how do we keep our customers informed? How do we stay close to people? How do we? Because I don't think that's my skill. As much as I know what I'm talking about and can stay in touch with people, I think I get a little bit lost in the details. And Henry's great at saying, how do we make sure we deliver value? Um, he's so great.
All
Take
right.
anything away from this, so he's
That
a great co-founder.
you've done a great job of that. So let's talk about the environment that we live in today, and how I don't know how you all are helping folks or trying to add some intelligence, or how you're just playing in. How do y'all interact in that customs and compliance and tariffs and trade world that everyone is hearing about these days? It's front page news five
Yeah,
times a
for
day.
sure. Yeah, well, for sure. I'll center it around really one central theme. It has literally never been more important than right now to know your supply chain strategy. Right? If you are just sort of fielding things as they come, you're doing it the wrong way. So if that's how it feels for you, if it feels like constant fires and it feels like you're always making decisions and then undoing them, then you are factually not doing this the right way. So I'm going to center it around that, which is I think a lot of people feel that way. And so a friend of mine, Rajiv Mohapatra, actually gave me that quote, which is, it's never been more important to know your supply chain strategy. He ran supply chain at Quince and also was at Pitney Bowes and ran their e-commerce um, division. I think people often misunderstand that quote, though, so that it's never been more important to understand your supply chain strategy. I speak to retailers who think that the right way to handle what's going on right now is just to move their country of origin. Oh, if we just don't manufacture in China, everything will be okay. That just couldn't be further from the truth, right? I've been saying that for 6 months or more, and we didn't even have Trump then, right, changing these policies. But certainly in the last 2 weeks with reciprocal tariffs, or last month, it's been very clear that that's the wrong answer. But for a long time, it wasn't clear. Yeah, so I was speaking with people earlier in the year, and they were saying, "No, we're good. We're not worried about the tariffs, or we're not worried about changing trade landscape because we've moved our country of origin. We're now manufacturing everything in Bangladesh." I go, right, okay. Well, they say they moved everything to Vietnam, and I go, right. How's that treating you? You know, have a look at the rules. It's just That's just not the answer. It's not a one size fits all. You can't just move out of China and you're good to go. I think at the root of it is that your data has never been more valuable ever than right now. Of course, I say that I'm a technology person, right? But the answer lies in how customs look at this problem. The answer lies in how legislators look at this problem for trade. If you get to the root of it, they only have a few mechanisms to be able to enforce the rules. They've got people opening boxes at customs. They've got machines scanning these things, and then they've got data. Data is the only scalable way for them to enforce the rules, and it's why you see things like Secretary Lutnick had to declare that they have the systems in place to administer the tariffs. Now, I don't know for sure that they really have those systems in place. I'm curious to see how that plays out. We're going to find out soon. But I think that you can look at the way that they're administering this policy as a
Like a
Beacon.
just oh
Yeah,
okay, a
as
red
a
flag.
as a
Yeah.
as a as a few, I don't know, like shining light in the future, right?
Okay.
It's like a crystal ball. If you look at what rules they're changing, that tells you how you should be acting. Um, and I think that they're looking at more and more data as the way to solve some of these problems. So if you don't have your product master data in a good place today, if you are running around like everything's on fire all the time, that should be the answer. That should be enough. So at the root of True is doing this for you, is pulling together all of the product master data that you need to be able to make decisions quickly. So I like to say that we help people implement agility, right? We're in a period of time where change is happening faster than it ever has. It's only continuing to happen more quickly. And the answer doesn't lie in having the right strategy. The answer lies in having agility. And if nothing else, True helps you implement agility. So that helps you make faster decisions, helps you make those decisions automated in a really automated fashion, and does it fully compliantly. That's at the root of it, is that you will be able to stand up to even the toughest of scrutiny while improving the speed, efficiency, and your ability to change of your operation.
Uh, let's see. Let's play the game of splitting hairs. Is How do you compare agility to like the other buzzwords that people try to put next to supply chain, like robust or anti-fragile, or any of these other sort of. There's a particular S word also that I can't think of right now that everyone was trying to was thinking about after COVID. It's like our supply chains need to be not sustainable. It's another uh,
Resilient?
resilient. The R, sorry, it was one letter before. My alphabet was off. Where does agility fit in those other buzzwords? Is it very closely connected? Is it an enabler, or how do you look at that?
Yeah, I had a great conversation with a friend of mine. I was just in Toronto 2 weeks ago, and he was telling me they do a lot of volume. And he was telling me, um, Hugo, we built the foundation of our house. We built the walls. We put the ceilings in. We put in the windows. We put the roof on. Um, and it's been great. It's been running all smooth. And now it's getting a little windy, right? And it's not quite ready for the amount of wind. And I think part of that is the winds are changing. The winds are blowing really hard at the moment. And a lot of people with long, long, long time set up supply chains are starting to see the weakness. So while it was very strong, it was very robust, it was very resilient. When the fundamental pipes of supply chain and of cross border trade change, it's not resilient. It was resilient under its existing conditions. That supply chain setup is robust, but it's not agile. It's not ready for change, and so a lot of people basically need a system that can layer on top of what they have, that gives them the agility on top of the robustness. And I think that's where True has kind of found its home, is people who have really, really solid systems that work, right? We're seeing it operationally work every single day. But now change can be implemented in 24 hours, and they are simply not ready to implement these changes in 24 hours. So that's where True comes in. We're able to automate lots of processes, all those things. So that's why people really like us.
You know what I picture is a like a robust type of supply chain. When we're thinking about really strong, is like a cylinder block concrete building that's very, concrete has a great strength, but it's also kind of fragile if you hit it in the wrong way or whatever. So it's like not earthquake proof because it will crack and that sort of thing. And so
Right?
so in an earthquake type of environment, you have to build things in a way that it can move around a little bit, that it can absorb sort of
Yeah.
changes in the environment and still be strong at the same time.
It's
Yeah.
a fantastic way to say it.
Right.
And being able to just to do that retroactively sounds impossible, but that's kind of the point.
Right. Actually, I feel like being in Japan, you can take something and just put it on rollers. So I feel like maybe that your approach is like True is the rollers that you can throw your otherwise stable concrete thing on, and now and then you can do this little dance like this little head bobble. So, um, let's talk. Maybe just any words of advice, from your perspective, of just like maybe helping folks see past the moment that we're in. Any like positive, leader type of inspirational things you got that you can leave us with today?
Yeah, I'll throw at you one of my favorite books. It's called Thinking in Bets. It's written by an author named Annie Duke. She was a professional poker player, and she won like $8 million playing poker. And she ended up then writing. She runs a company now. Actually, a friend of mine works there. But she wrote this book, and it basically talks about how when we make decisions, right, which people are making a lot of right now, you're not really making a decision. You're placing a bet. You're saying, I believe that more than 90%, or hopefully more than 90%, I think this is going to be the outcome. And so, for me, that taught me kind of not to blame, shift blame off myself. We all come out of things when we realize that we were wrong. Say, oh my God, how could I have made that decision? It was so bad. I was so wrong. It's like, look, you did the best with the information you had at the time, right? And it's okay to be wrong. Today, some of those decisions are very costly, right? We're seeing, tariffs come in, and you probably shouldn't have made that decision. You spent 40% more than you could have. And you could have, there might have been savings on the table. But to be honest, supply chain is this kind of thing where you have a transaction. Once it's done, it's done. This isn't the kind of thing you can undo. It's not transitory. It's very final, right? Once something has moved, especially between borders, once it leaves origin, that's it. It's done. So I think that you should litigate your decisions heavily, but once you've made the decision, you can't put that much thought to it anymore. It's done. Consider drawback. I don't know, but my advice would be that you should be thinking in bets. Consider reading that book, and lean on your network. You've got great people around you. If you're dealing with any amount of volume, you've got great people around you who know what they're doing. It's not their first time. Ask lots of questions. Reach out to me. More than happy to answer questions. But really, measure twice, cut once.
I like it. That's always good advice. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on. And also, I think we're going to see you at the next Global Trade Cafe. I think that you all are helping to sponsor that next one. So thank you very much for that. And thanks for just giving a little bit of expertise and experience today shared with us. So see you around, probably at the next Supply Chain Social Club event.
You can be sure of that. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.